Hello, I'm Cecilia Jaber, Mexican ambassador to Switzerland. It is my pleasure to present a very interesting part of our program to commemorate the International Women's Day, as this conversation is part of the dialogues Women in Traditional Mexican Music. And we have with us Mireya Ramos and Shae Fiol, co-founders of the all-female mariachi band Flor de Toloache, one of the most original and successful women's bands that have gained the love of all Mexican music fans. Welcome and thank you for being with us, Mireya and Shae.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I would like to highlight that Flor de Toloache is a diverse and multicultural New York-based mariachi band, founded in 2008. And as I mentioned before, it has gained international fame as they won the 2017 Latino Grammy Award for Best Mariachi Ranchero Album. They have also recently recorded the song with American soul and pop star John Legend. But I don't want to be the only one talking, and I would like to ask Mireya and Shae to tell us a little more about the origins of this band. How do you end up doing mariachi music? And most importantly, founding an all-female mariachi band. Welcome again, and please, Mireya and Shae.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. Yes, we started in 2008 in New York City. I come from a mariachi background because my father's from Michoacan, Mexico, and he was a mariachi singer. And he used to perform mariachi in San Juan, Puerto Rico, where I was raised. And I used to go to all of his gigs, and I would just be in awe watching him perform. And that's how I first fell in love with the tradition of mariachi. And that was my introduction to my Mexican heritage. And when I moved to New York City, I got the opportunity to perform and to gig around the city with a local mariachi in Brooklyn, which I performed with about 7 years prior to Flor de Toloache. And that whole experience, other than connecting, allowing me to connect to my roots and really learn so much about my culture, it also sparked the idea of and the desire to form this group of an all-female mariachi. It's due to like the beautiful experience, obviously, of playing mariachi and connecting to the culture and playing the quinceañeras, the traditional parties in people's homes. But also, you know, on the other side, on the flip side, there was this whole experience that I wasn't expecting, which was the whole machismo that you encounter within that genre, but also just in general in the music industry. So all of those experiences really pushed me, and it was an excuse for me to meet other women and collaborate with them and create a safe space for women to come together. And that was the original idea of Flor de Toloache. And of course, the first person I thought of was Shae, and I called her up and I was like, "Hey, do you want to start this mariachi?" And she had never played mariachi, but I'll let her say her part from that point on. But yeah, it's been a beautiful experience and in creating Flor de Toloache, and it's a true reflection of what New York City really represents. It's the diversity, the richness that you encounter in New York City, musically, culturally, the food, everything. So I think Flor de Toloache really represents that.
And what about you, Shae? Because I guess you were familiar to Cuban songs or the sonnets. What was your experience?
So I had just had finished a solo album that was mostly in English, 95%, one verse in Spanish. But it was singer-songwriter. And, you know, Mireya and I had played together for years before she asked me to join the group. And so when she said it was a mariachi, I mean, I could just barely wrap my head around the music, let alone what an all-female mariachi would entail, what the instruments were. And so there was a lot of educating happening, you know, for the first decade of our group, not only in the music, but how, you know, what mariachi means beyond just a style of music, but as a culture and its relevance in Mexican culture and in Latin American culture. So I didn't know exactly how much work it was going to be, but I loved playing music with Mireya. I knew that much. I thought an all women's band sounded fabulous because I also, although not in the mariachi genre, had experience working with mostly male musicians. And so it was definitely something that I was looking forward to. And from there had to learn the vihuela, which is similar to a guitar, but it's not exactly like it. And then of course the rhythms are super unique to that instrument and to the genre of mariachi. So the style of singing and all these nuances that I didn't realize that, you know, were so important and prominent in the genre that I would have to learn. And I learned so much from Mireya, and I learned a lot from the man who directed the mariachi that she was part of for all those years. He took us under his wing and showed us a lot, and also of course Mireya's family. So that's how I got my start. I didn't know what I was signing up for, but I'm glad I did.
Well, and I guess all Mexicans, we have once in a while surrendered to the Toloache effect. And I suppose that's the goal of your band, to seduce with your music. Why did you pick the name of Flor de Toloache?
Well, originally our name was Xochitl, which means flower in the Nahuatl language. And it was just too hard for people to remember or pronounce. So we were like, we need something that's feminine, but powerful and strong and memorable. And even though Toloache is not super easy for an American person to remember, or someone that doesn't speak Spanish, it's intriguing enough for people to ask what it means. And once they know, then they remember. So I think that we chose the name of the band to be Toloache because it was unique. No one else, no other mariachi had that name. And it's a very mystical, powerful flower. And it has the feminine side of the flower, but it has all these other elements to it, like us women, you know. So that's, and it's used in love potions. So we wanted that magical factor of it as well.
And also within the topic of the significance of Toloache, or the name of your band, it comes along also the significance of playing, performing music that was usually performed by men, and also the lyrics of the mariachi music. It's always singing to their female lover, and many times, as we say in Mexico, this music for ardidos, or when the men are angry because the woman doesn't pay attention to them. And so how do you leave this, let's say, transforming this cultural, basically men significance in the music, in the performance, in conforming the band, and also the lyrics? How do you adapt both to perform some kind of traditionally music that was for men bands, and how do you also adapt or transform the lyrics of your music?
So that particular thing was a whole process for us, because we didn't really, in the beginning, we were just trying to learn the classical traditional repertoire. And I grew up with it. So I didn't, like, for me, it were just familiar songs, right? Songs that I saw my father sing, without really paying attention so much to the lyrics and the meaning of it. And some of them are a little bit out there with the lyrics, a little bit misogynistic, but that's the perspective where it comes from, and it's it's part of the tradition. And so when we learned it, we weren't really thinking about that until we really started realizing, oh, we're a women's band, and we, how is this going to come across? And if we are representing women in this way, and it's our responsibility to also be careful with what we're saying, with what we're singing. So we started changing the pronouns of some of the songs, and then writing our own songs. That was the solution. So we brought in our own songs that we already had. Shae had her solo project, and then I had mine. So we brought our songs that we had written a long time ago, and then we started writing as well as a band, and more targeted towards the project, and adapting it to Flor de Toloache's concept, and really thinking about what do we want to say, and what do we want to represent, and what we want to leave for the next generation of women and boys, and in between. So I think that it was a process for us to really realize that, and come to terms with that, and really be conscious of that while we were writing and arranging our own songs.
Wow. Shae, you want to add something?
Well, definitely Mireya covered all the essentials. And yeah, I think, like she said, it was a process, and particularly for me, because I was learning more Spanish, the language, as I went along and studied the lyrics. And it definitely stood out to me as somebody from the outside of the culture, and from outside of the genre, not knowing the songs, and really kind of paying more attention to the lyrics, because I had to learn them, and noticing, wow, like, where is the woman's voice in this? Like asking, like, do we change the O, to an A, to be women singing this, or is that going to work, or how does this work? Because it felt, even if you change the gender of the words, it still felt like, I don't know about this. And so, like Mireya said, it needed tweaking for us, and to really represent and be authentic to who we are and who we became, and our growth. And so to write songs was the natural path for us, and that in itself is very empowering, and became a big part of our core message as a group, is to bring this perspective to an all male-dominated genre, and then that to kind of flower out and influence and inspire women in all male-dominated genres to, find their voice and let it be heard, whether it's music, or it's engineering, or it's, science, what it may be. But that's the idea, is that, if women can find that within themselves to be bold and let their voice be heard, as challenging and as many obstacles as we face, we can inspire each other across all genres of music and career, etc.
And well, I am sure that even if it was not an explicit goal of you when you were studying, but you have become a role model for, as Mireya mentioned before, for the new generations, and both girls and boys. And I think that is a great thing for your band, a great thing for you. And so how does Flor de Toloache bring its own imprint to mariachi music? And there is something that I also would like to ask now, again, talking about all these images that you are giving to not only to your audiences, but as I said, as role models. Can you talk a little bit about your dress? And how is there any meaning in particular of the kind of dress that you wear?
Yeah, it's definitely it definitely evolved rapidly. We started with skirts, which were the traditional, that is the traditional outfit for a female mariachi. You know, being in New York, being multicultural, these rules weren't as quite as rigid for us, because we were already putting our own, you know, our own stamp, our own authenticity into what we were doing and representing mariachi, but also an alternative form of mariachi. And being in New York, as I was saying, it's a, you know, a fashion hub. And so we were around all kinds of fashion and or innovative, you know, fashion week this, fashion week that, and Soho this, and all these beautiful concepts happening around us. And really, the lifestyle of a New Yorker is go 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 all the time. And we found that, you know, being in skirts to our ankles didn't allow us to, you know, run up and down and catch the subway on the stairs, or run from this gig to that gig, or we were cold, or but on top of it, it was also, you know, there's a femininity in we decided to wear pants. And so that is our part of our brand. And we started wearing pants earlier on. And it's interesting because it kind of parallels when women, you know, started entering the workforce and started wearing pants, and it was pushed back on. We received a similar pushback for deciding to wear pants, as if it weren't allowed, and as if we didn't have the choice to wear pants or not. And so, you know, it was kind of an interesting conversation piece to be, you know, wearing pants, but then receiving pushback because we're women, and not being able to have a choice as to how we dress ourselves. Even though I understand it's a tradition, you know, things evolve. And as mariachi came to the States, things, you know, became, you know, in I can't think of the word, but mixed with all different, you know, I guess like ideas and fashion senses and things. So we decided to embrace the pants. And we also decided to design our own outfits, because having access to traje, like the traditional ones, very hard for us. So not only we decided to wear pants, but we also had to design our own outfits just so that we could fit everybody with the same uniform. So there's a lot of things that, a lot of, I guess, obstacles that we had to overcome in order to just dress our entire band when it was much larger. And that's just kind of how things very organically kind of made us who we are, whether it's how we dress or our music and all these things. But it was kind of like, you know, forming that gem wherever it happens in the earth, because it is unique where it's happening. And it's definitely unique as it's happening here for us, as it was happening here for us in New York. Kind of these unexpected things came up that we had to adjust to, if that makes sense.
It does. It does makes a lot of sense. I also would like you to tell us a little bit about your band, because you are the two co-founders of this band, but I understand that you can play as a traditional mariachi band with 11 musicians, or I don't know how many, and sometimes you play with less than that. Can you tell us a little bit about how is it? Is it difficult to have musicians, or how is that?
Yeah, it was definitely much harder to find the ladies that would commit to this concept and this new collective of women that is Flor de Toloache. And we thought it was going to be one of those things where like, oh, do you want to join this amazing concept that we just came up with? And people were just going to join, but it didn't happen that way. And also the Mexican community was just starting to grow in New York. So it's not like in California where a lot of obviously it was Mexico before. So there are generations of Mexican there, and a lot of people even learn mariachi in school. So in New York, it was a new thing. So it was really hard to find people that were even interested in learning this new tradition. And in learning a new tradition comes like with a lot of time that you have to put into learning the songs by ear. And we didn't have a music sheet, although you can possibly find them online. But a lot of the arrangements we made ourselves, and we didn't really have them written down, so I had to write them down by hand, because at that time I didn't know how to do it online. And so it was a lot more work than what we thought. And it was also a learning experience for us as leaders of this band, on how people come together and how they learn, and how can we make this work, and how do we have to learn each person, and how do we respectfully talk to everyone. And so it's from, obviously there's the music part, but there's also the how do you call that, the communication part of it. Yeah, interpersonal behavior, and learning how to deal with that and how to manage that. So in the beginning it was really hard, but we learned as we went. And we would, any girl that we would see playing anywhere in New York City, we would recruit them and try to convince them to be part of Flor de Toloache, and a lot of them did, and they were part of it. So at some point we were 10, or even more, 12 musicians from all over, Australia, Korea, Japan, Singapore, Mexico, Colombia, so the Dominican Republic. So we were from everywhere, and it was just a beautiful part in the history of Flor de Toloache, where we were really a big band and a traditional band. But with that came, obviously it's really hard for everyone, each person, to commit to this, to the goal that we wanted. Shae and I had a vision for this band. We wanted this band to be successful. We wanted to travel. We wanted to do our own songs. We wanted to tour and do albums and all those things. So and everyone in the band had their own projects. So it was really hard to keep everything together. And it's also financially almost impossible nowadays. And we had this opportunity to tour with Dan Auerbach from the Black Keys. And I think that was the pivotal point for us, and where we had to be only 4 musicians, and we had to adapt all the arrangements to a 4-piece mariachi. And that's how we toured for a year with him. And then after that, we were like, oh, we could do this as a 4-piece. So, and really, it was very telling on who was actually committed to the direction that Flor de Toloache was going. And obviously no hard feelings on, everyone has their own amazing project going on in New York City, and we celebrate each other's success, and that's part of it as well. And we're happy that Flor de Toloache was a part of their career and their growth as musicians. So for us, it's important that we can be a 4-piece, but we're also happy when we get the opportunity where we can call other musicians and invite them and be on stage. Like when we were invited for the Latin Grammys, the year that we won in 2017, we also got invited to accompany Natalia Lafourcade y Carlos Rivera on stage. And we had to have a huge mariachi. So we invited all the ladies, and they came, and it was an amazing experience. And they all came on stage too to receive the award with us. So it was a really special moment.
I'm sure it was. I bet it was. And as you say that you have been touring, but you started in the US and you started in New York. How difficult was to break ground in New York for this kind of music? I know that again that obviously the mariachi music is very well known in the United States, no doubt. But to be a female band, how hard was it for you?
I definitely think that, well, at least here in New York, you know, there was a couple things happening. There was somewhat still, like Mireya said, still somewhat of a lack of familiarity with the genre of mariachi in general. But the little exposure that maybe people out in the clubs, you know, out at various rock clubs or jazz clubs or all the places that we ended up playing, but they hadn't really, the audiences there hadn't really seen mariachi on a stage like that, or so in that context. And so their vision was, you know, typically all men. And so I think that the lack of exposure to mariachi in New York City, you know, as something consistent, and the fact that we are female, all female, I think that was really special for people. And so in a way where mariachi isn't so common, or wasn't, especially at the time, as wasn't so common, people didn't see mariachi all the time like maybe they do in California, for example, or Texas or the Southwest. Seeing a mariachi, all women, was like, wow, this is amazing. And then being in using our connections to get into non-traditional mariachi venues. So there definitely are festivals here, mariachi festivals. There's, you know, all of the important celebrations, you know, there's quinceañeras and the weddings and the special events that we're hired for, but then taking the music outside of those typical performances and into the public, that was rather unusual, whether you're male or female mariachi. So we were taking the music and then fusing it. And so all these things happening together actually gave us a nice footing to be recognized and to be seen to a certain extent. I mean, there are, you know, millions and millions and millions of people here. So to get noticed in New York is very hard. And so I think that kind of helped us catch people's eyes. And we were able to kind of break in to a certain extent. We definitely got some calls to, you know, collaborate in some live shows when some Latin artists would pass through. And then eventually, like Mireya said, we ended up connecting through one of her friends with a rock group, you know, very like almost like a rock icon, Dan Auerbach, to end up touring with him. But all along that way, we were playing and playing and playing nonstop in New York City, and being noticed and being invited to special events, for a lot of Cinco de Mayo events here in New York City. It's not as celebrated in Mexico, right? But it's definitely celebrated in New York. So we did a lot of that. We did a lot of, we got a lot of opportunities to be in the media here in New York. We were on Katie Couric's show on The View, Harry Connick Jr., lots of news shows. People would have us on because they wanted something special. And that was a really cool thing to be able to be, was this kind of special, representing women, representing multicultural bands, bilingual. So it actually had its advantages in some ways to be a women group in New York. It definitely helped us stand out even more, I think. What do you think, Mireya?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely we had to pave our own way because we didn't get the support that we thought we were going to get from, especially the traditional, yeah, the traditional community of mariachi. Only a few mariachis obviously were open to the idea and were there for us, like our mentor, Don Antonio Vidal, which is the guy who I performed with for years, and one of the first people to really show me a lot of repertoire of the traditional mariachi repertoire. And he gave us our first guitarrón and our first vihuela that she played. And so we did get some support, but not what we thought we were going to get. And that also worked. Obviously it's at times discouraging, but it worked in our advantage because that pushed us to really just create our own path. We did our own songs. We were like, okay, we're not going to have your support, but we'll just get our own gigs and play in venues that nobody's played, that no mariachis have played before. And that's exactly what happened. And with those opportunities came also the opportunity to create our own arrangements and our fusion that we love to do. And that really solidified that concept of what is Flor de Toloache now, which is a fusion of beautiful diversity of music and culture.
Well, I am really wanting to listen to your music and tell us. I know that this year it's still very difficult to talk about touring or going to places, and we had heard that you were coming sometime to Switzerland. How is your touring, or are you performing more like this in a virtual way, or how is the future for you and so for us? Because whenever you come to Switzerland, we will be there front and center.
Yes, we hope to make it. We were not touring currently, but we do have plans of touring later on this year. Not sure, if things will change, but as of now, we have plans of doing that, a few shows in the US, not so much internationally yet, but we hope to do so next year. We are doing a lot of virtual shows. We did Colombia Parque, which is really, Rock al Parque, sorry, in Bogota, Colombia. We did a virtual show for them. We did a Cinco de Mayo thing last year. What else have we done, Shae, virtually?
We've done some private events. We did Dolores Huerta's 90th birthday party last year. We sang happy birthday to her for her program. We did a Hispanic Heritage Month performance. Yeah, and a couple private ones, but maybe like a handful, which is roughly 5% of what we normally do during the year.
Definitely. And we are really looking forward. I'm looking forward to see some of your videos and someday to see you go and listen to your performances. I would like to thank you for having been here with us. And I wish you even more of the success you are already having. Thank you for being with us.
Gracias. Thank you, Cecilia.
Thank you so much for having us.